Well, everybody, it's going to be a happy Bears victory Monday tomorrow. And I think after last week's performance, it was honestly just nice. All they had to do was go out there and win. I think that's the sole objective after you really kind of just lay down an egg like they did last week against the Browns. They come out, win 24-14 against the Lions. How are you feeling about it, Zach, overall?
Really good. Also glad to be back after a week of being absent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been pretty sick. My voice is going to sound a little different for this cast, but no, overall, just really, really happy to see the Bears catch W. Felt like the Lions were making a pretty valiant effort there in the third and fourth quarter to come back, but our defense did just enough to hold them back. And yeah, man, coming away with that W was big.
Yeah, I mean, the defense today was really the definition of bend but don't break. I mean, the Lions really did not have much trouble at all getting the ball downfield. They never really broke the game too wide open. Honestly, Jared Goff missed a couple of deep balls that could have been probably game-changing, but they were able to drive down about the 10-yard line. And honestly, if they end up putting it into the end zone on that first drive, we might have actually had a pretty decent or close game. But it kind of just had a little bit of a domino effect where they didn't convert, and it just kind of told the story for the rest of the first half, and it really just put them in too big of a hole with too much to make up with in the second half.
Yeah, like Jared Goff had a pretty good game. I mean, you could just see it, and even on the stat line, not to read too much into it, but almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Even the one that looked like the missed snap that bounced off his chest, and one of our defensive linemen. Very weird. I was chatting with Austin. I couldn't figure out if that was an interception. I guess that's technically a fumble. He never really had his hands on the ball. So yeah, overall Goff played a pretty good game, and he had a couple of those passes, like you said, that were in the hands of receivers. They had the opportunity to make a play, and they just missed it. So we lucked out a couple times, but our defense, looked a hell of a lot better than they did against the Browns.
Yeah, well, I think against the Browns, the defense wasn't terribly bad. It's just they're being put out on the field constantly. And this game was a little bit opposite. The Bears were able to sustain some drives, really grind the ball downfield. I thought overall Justin Fields did a pretty good job. Possibly could have had that touchdown to Kmet in the end zone, but didn't end up falling the Bears' way. And he did a good job managing the game. Only 17 passing attempts. He had a good scramble out of the pocket when he needed to and picked up some valuable extra yards. He was really just a lot more tuned into the game. The interception wasn't fully his fault, but really I thought the story of the offense was really just being able to pound the ball downfield with David Montgomery, especially in the first half of the game, really set up the rest of the Bears play calling, and they're allowed to do play action after that, and really kept the Lions secondary mainly on their toes. And it seemed like the game plan that the Bears had rolled out for the offense worked out pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, I thought that the balanced attack was beautiful. I think that there's some rumors going around online whether or not Matt Nagy even was calling plays, or if he handed off offensive play calling to Bill Lazor. But, Montgomery had 23 rushing attempts. Damian Williams came in with 8. So I guess, they definitely leaned in favor of the pounding the ball. But Justin Fields, his stat line is going to be misleading. 17 attempts. He only completed 11, 200 yards with just 1 pick and no touchdowns. But you had to watch the game. Justin Fields was slinging that thing downfield. When they did give him a chance to throw it, he was moving around a bit. He wasn't just stuck in the pocket. They had him, using his legs a bit. And when he had time, man, he was chucking that thing. I don't think we've seen deep balls like that, at least on a consistent basis, in years. I could tell the receivers were getting super hyped up. Darnell Mooney had himself a massive game. 5 receptions for 125 yards. He was averaging 25 a catch. And, they got Allen Robinson going late. 3 receptions, but 63 yards. So he was averaging over 20. Yeah, they pounded the rock, but when it was time to air it out, they did it successfully too.
Yeah, and I thought one major change too, and I think everyone's attention always gets dragged to the quarterback. Justin Fields was his second start, his first start at home, and yeah, I agree with you. I think he did really well. One thing that the Bears did really well in this game, they got the ball in the hands of their weapons. Like you said, 5 catches for Mooney and had a big day, very efficient. And also, I think the one part of Fields' stat line that isn't misleading is that 11 completions for 206 yards. That's over 10 yards per completion. He was definitely getting some deeper balls out there. And, I thought that the Bears were a bit creative in getting the ball to Mooney, a couple plays where they gave it to him in the running game. And yeah, it was really only Allen Robinson that wasn't really featured too heavily, which has been kind of an interesting narrative for him this season. There really hasn't been a single game where they've really been able to get him going. Not sure if it's a matchup or thing or whatever it is, but I think that, the Bears heavily leaning on their weapons, and I think Mooney really stood out this game, and so did Montgomery, and they leaned on him. So we'll see what that looks like moving forward. To get into the Montgomery injury a little bit, don't want to speculate too much. I just know that, when he's laying there screaming on the ground, it's not the best looking situation, and hopefully the Bears don't have to game plan with him being out of the lineup for too long, and want to stay optimistic. But it looks like it might be something serious.
Yeah, I mean, Fox refused to show the replay, which was kind of alarming. When he first went down, I could tell he was in a lot of pain. But contrary to what Austin was saying through text, I thought he was grabbing at his hip. It looked like it was higher up. You and Austin saw it differently. You guys saw him grabbing for the back of the knee, pretty indicative of an ACL tear. Man, if we lost Tariq Cohen and David Montgomery to ACLs, I don't know. This rushing attack's going to take a big hit.
I think it's going to take a big hit, but I think that Damian Williams, when he was featured in this game, I think he did all right. I think it's going to...
Damian Williams averaged 6.9 yards a carry, and he got a touchdown.
Which, if he needs to take some more of the weight, maybe those numbers will get grounded down a little bit, and we'll start to see it get a little bit more realistic. But I don't think my concern will be with Damian Williams. It's can Khalil Herbert step up, and when he's called upon, can he be effective as well? So, the Bears are just going to have to adjust with it. I think more than likely, maybe we can expect Montgomery to be out for at least this Raiders game. I'd say on an optimistic note. There's no way I don't see him coming back for this next week. Hopefully we're not looking at something without the whole season for him. But hey, the trade window is still definitely open if the Bears are, interested in going after a running back. I'm sure there's going to be some options for them out there, but it's going to be something for them to keep in mind for sure. Just kind of looking back at the defense, I know we're jumping around a little bit all over the place. Just a couple notable things to take in. Ogletree starting over Danny Trevathan, even though Trevathan was off of IR, and it looked like Tonga was getting more reps than Eddie Goldman, which I think maybe is to be a little bit expected since it's been unlikely to even know if Eddie Goldman was going to play this week. It's been just too tough to tell week in, week out. But really, I felt Ogletree played a very, very good game. He had that really crucial pass breakup along the goal line where it was probably going to be a touchdown to, I think, Swift in the middle of the end zone. He was able to tip it up and back out the end zone. And Tonga had a costly penalty, but for the most part, the defensive front was pretty solid this whole game. But they were giving up a little bit on the run. I think that's kind of one thing to keep watching throughout the rest of this season. The defense, I think, played exactly as well as they needed to. I'm not gonna nitpick extremely here, but I think there's a few things as fans that we can be concerned about a little bit with this defense moving forward.
No, I thought especially early on, the biggest weakness we had was the run game was we did not have an answer for it. They fell short in the red zone twice, but one thing goes good for them, they get a play here or there. It could be a totally different game. Two red zone trips that they missed out on could, in theory, is a 28-point game. They could have taken the lead. Now, of course, we played a little conservatively down the stretch, But no, I think that our run defense needs a little bit of work. We definitely, coming away with a 14-point game, you got to be happy. You got to say, all right, that's enough to win us games. But I definitely thought that there was room for improvement too.
Remarkably, the Lions had over 30 plays, I think, within the red zone against the Bears, which is pretty crazy if they're only walking away with 14 points out of that game. I felt a little bit at the end of the game. My general overall feeling was maybe the Bears can feel a little bit fortunate, but you got to be happy with walking away with the win in the way that they did. How do you feel after a game like this from Fields? If Dalton's healthy, I know that the kind of narrative has been, once Dalton's healthy and ready to go, he's QB1. Do you think it's still feasible after performance like this, or do you think that, Fields was doing himself a lot of credit going out and playing the way they did today?
The thing is, this is tough because Fields had himself a game and he played really well. And the stats, I am one that leans pretty heavily on stats, probably harder than Austin or even yourself, Reese. I definitely think that, numbers don't generally lie. But in this case, in this game, Justin Fields was moving the offense. Montgomery obviously was a huge part of the game. But there was a couple opportunities where they just elected to run the ball. Fields could have come away with a couple touchdowns in this game. They just decided Montgomery was rolling, and we're gonna keep pushing the ball that way. I think that the argument could be made that the red rocket could come back in here and run the offense just as effectively. Granted, Montgomery is healthy. The trick here is that if Montgomery is injured and he's out for a couple weeks, we need more mobility on the offense and in the rushing game. And the thing is that Justin Fields obviously gives us that. He gives us the ability to move the pocket, to run outside of it, so run some bootlegs. Obviously, Khalil Herbert's going to be a factor. We know he's got the speed. We just really haven't given him a chance too much to kind of prove it. He only had 3 carries for 7 yards this game. Not a great display, but that was sort of in garbage time anyway, when defenses are looking for you to run. So in terms of who gives us the best chance to win, it's kind of a hard decision to make. Dalton's got more experience. He might know how to kind of adjust the offense, given the fact that we've lost our main, our bell cow running back. But Justin Fields has just shown so much promise and so much potential, and especially in this game, this really felt like his coming out game, that I think the fans and basically everybody, they just want to see what more can Fields do, how much more can he grow. He was moving the offense. He was throwing it so deep downfield. Dalton just was not throwing. He didn't throw. I think in his 2 weeks he didn't throw anything past like 20 yards. I mean, right. It was just night and day. So, I don't know. Really, that's a tough call to make. I would lean at this point, having Fields started twice, I would lean towards just roll with Fields. He's our future. Just see what he's got.
I think you at least got to let him, give the chance to continue building off of something like this. He made a big step, not that he had much opportunity last week, but, even with that taken into account, made a big step forward this week. And, he's got a chance to face a really tough team in the Raiders, but it's possibly a challenge that could make him really just break through another barrier as well. And, looking ahead, the Bears' schedule certainly gets a lot tougher. It's going to be an interesting run, and I think there's certainly even ways that Justin Fields can continue to show out if the rest of the Bears team doesn't. And you made a good point as well with the Montgomery injury situation. It's a team that's probably going to have to get a little bit more creative. They were able to really just pound the ball with Montgomery today, and that really created a lot of opportunity. They're going to need to create opportunities and variety in their play calls through other opportunities. And I think that Justin Fields is someone that basically brings you something in every phase of offensive game. He can run the ball, pass the ball very effectively downfield, showed that today. And you can even get more creative with him. I know they even open up the wrinkle a tiny bit by running the Wildcat enough in this past game that, maybe you actually do make a play where he doesn't end up taking the snap, but ends up being the one that throws the ball. Some kind of interesting little trick play. Not that the Bears need to be getting too fancy. Things are just starting to kind of work out and go their way offensively. Right. But I think that overall, I feel like they should roll with Fields. I think Dalton may be a little bit of a step backwards, but at least we can be happy this week with the steps that were taken forward. And one last thing I don't want to forget is Travis Gibson. One hell of a game today. Another kind of late round pick by Ryan Pace that's showing that he's developing into something, very special possibly, and could definitely be a part of the succession plan with this defense as far as getting some of these older members out of the front seven out, and he could very well be someone that's, being a full-time starter in, a year or two time.
Yeah, Gibson had himself a good game. Robert Quinn, Roquan Smith, Khalil Mack, all stepping up to the plate. The first three I mentioned all came away with sacks. Our defense as a whole just looked like a more cohesive unit. We were making stops, we were making big plays. Anytime you have multiple sacks in the game, it's good, and it starts to get to a quarterback. So I like that we have some young players that are really showing up. Alec Ogletree led the team in tackles. He got the starting nod over Danny Trevathan. I thought that was kind of an interesting development, given the fact Trevathan just signed this contract extension I think last year, bringing him back or in this offseason. So seeing Ogletree, who's a year younger, show up on the stat line the way he did and really just passing the eye test, that was pretty big. And I was definitely proud of our defense. I thought that there was a couple close calls in the backfield. Our cornerbacks still are somewhat questionable, but overall, it was a massive improvement. I think week to week we've actually been looking better and better too.
Yeah, and one thing too that I loved is seeing Roquan Smith get the opportunity to blitz. It seems like every opportunity he gets to blitz, he's getting home and making a sack. It's a little bit unexpected, and I'm sure offense is going to start to game plan it for a little bit more. But right now, strike while the iron's hot. A lot of times when he's blitzing, he is getting unblocked, and usually blitzing
so fast,
right up a gap. It's going to be a broken play no matter what. When someone like Roquan Smith has a free release like that, just been super excited. And like you said, a lot of the big names and even a couple of players like Alec Ogletree really kind of showing up and playing well, and helping patch over some of these issues that we're seeing a little bit in the secondary. Still a couple of soft or blown coverages. When it comes to Duke Shelley, I think Kendall Vildor had a couple suspect plays, and Deion Bush, who for the most part played a very solid game, but had that really bad blown coverage where he should have continued dropping back into
they're
zone.
All sitting there shrugging hands at each other.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing the pointing game like the Spider-Man meme, but yeah. Overall, though, not to get too negative, I think that it was a very good performance by the Bears in terms of just getting back into that win column. And yeah, I mean, for a game that went well, it just seemed to go by super quick. And I really think that's like most of the talking points for this game. Honestly, there wasn't anything too crazy that ended up happening. It was a pretty run-of-the-mill football game.
No, I'll point out, I guess, Cairo Santos has been on an unbelievable roll.
Yeah, still perfect.
I'd like to call him Mr. Automatic. I mean, yeah, he's perfect. He's been perfect on the year, and he's perfect dating back to last season, like week 8 or something, like just some absurd, perfect run he's had. So, it's a small point, but going back just a couple seasons when we had that absolutely awful storyline going through the whole offseason of trying out 17 different kickers from 35 different countries, and and
real
trying out their parents
the
and real, absolutely true. 35 different countries, all 7 continents. It was just a mess, and to know that we actually got our kicker, it's an important position. It's often overlooked. I think just having a guy that comes in and is just automatic on the extra points, no problem kicking a 33-yard field goal. I think he's got 36 consecutive without a miss. He's, if he's not already the record holder, he's on his way to a Chicago Bears, consecutive field goal record. So yeah, just really happy about that. I thought that, small point, but he came away with 6 of our points, in a 24-point game. So
yeah, no, it's a remarkable step up for the Bears kicking game, and honestly, he's a good enough kicker where you could say, honestly, he can win you a game or two in the season by, just making some clutch kicks and field goals. A lot of times it's just really small differences like that, I've watched teams like the Chargers in the past, blow whole seasons because they have a bad kicker, and makes them look remarkably bad when they're losing really, really tight games. And the Bears have certainly had their run-in with that, the prior years before they got Cairo Santos, like you're saying, the sun never really set on the Bears kicking empire. They had a little bit of everything from everywhere. But yeah, overall, special teams and that, right, looking decent. And as far as, punting is usually okay. If we're going to go for a whole special teams report right here, punting team's usually pretty good. Kickoff return really kind of yet to do anything special. I'm not really expecting to see anything too amazing from them in the return game this year. But as long as they don't fumble the ball, I guess that's good.
But yeah, going back to even what you said about kickers winning games, I think anyone that's been watching the NFC North, a la all Bears fans, look no further than the Packers. Aaron Rodgers is the king of, driving downfield with 30 seconds to go, giving it up to the kicker to kick a 45. And the thing is, if you don't have a kicker that can do that, then that strategy is no good. And in fact, Rodgers just did it last week against the 49ers, didn't he?
Yep.
He had some crazy, he had 45 seconds drove downfield,
like that.
Some beautiful series. So it's just small point, but it's good to know we got a kicker that could come up clutch. Because there's always close games. There's always situations where, it's left up. Shit, the first year Trubisky got us to the playoffs. All we needed was a kicker, man.
Gonna bring that back up.
Who knows how far I know, but So it's good. It's good to see that position has been locked up. So glad to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's about all we got as far as this game breaks down. It definitely a positive win, positive sign for this Bears team. A little bit of the pressure comes off Matt Nagy from this past week, where he was really fully in the pressure cooker. But it gets a week of grace, and it's going to be a tough week to lead up against the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Bears will be playing out in Las Vegas, and we will be putting out a podcast this week to, get through that all. We will be breaking everything down, giving you guys some matchups to look forward to, and kind of all the other Bears news in between, hopefully shedding a little bit of light on the Montgomery situation as well. Anything else you got to say, Zach?
Oh, I think you got it right. We pretty much touched on everything. I think one last thing, maybe Matt Nagy's seat got a little bit cooler today. I think it's still pretty hot. But,
yeah.
I think anytime you catch a W, people are gonna kind of ease off a little bit. But we'll see about next week. It's gonna be a big week.
Yeah. No, I think that my takeaways from the commentating in this game, which, by the way, big fan of Gus Johnson, but Gus Johnson said it himself, it's going to keep the critics quiet for a week. And, one thing I learned from Aqib Talib is that football is a game of inches. So that was surely pressed in my skull. But enjoy your rest of your Sunday, Bears fans, and head into a happy Victory Monday, and bear down.
Bear down.